Johnny Cash, you are called the original badass of American music.
Original badass.
Well, I taught the weeping willow how to cry, and I showed the clouds how to cover up a clear blue sky, and the tears I cried for that woman are gonna flood you big river, and I'm gonna sit right here until I die.
I get into myself, and there's a dark side there, and I sing a lot of the dark side. Maybe that's what a lot of people relate to, because not too many people put the accent on the dark side like I do.
Hello, all you assholes out there in TV land. My name is Shithead Cowboy Jack Clement. Am I nervous? Nervous? No. I've been around a lot of strange personalities in my time. Hello, I'm Johnny Cash.
I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the ends out for the tie that binds. Because you're mine, I walk the line.
Well, the industry was pretty neat. The independents were taking a real good stand. Sam Phillips was going real well, and other independent labels. One of those rare times in musical history when independents can get a foothold. So things were happening there when I went there in 1956. I was one of the first musician types, I think, that ever ran a board, mixed. To me, it was like a musical instrument. I wasn't trying to get reality out of this thing. You know, I didn't care about that. I was trying to create something. So I put all this echo on it and mess around with it. I was an experimenter. And that's what Sam liked. He was always saying, bring me something different. Well, he was an unusual guy, very charismatic. And the best thing about him was that he had a way of making you want to please him, you know? Because when you please him, he lets you know it. Oh, I love that. Play that again. Play that part again. Oh, I love that. Don't you hear that? Play it again. That's the kind of stuff you like to get out of Sam Phillips.
There you go. You're gone again. I should have known I couldn't win.
Sun Records became one of the most important record labels that's ever been. It's just a little building at 706 Union in Memphis, a little tiny place, and through those doors, thanks in large part to Sam Phillips, who was the owner and producer there, people like Howlin' Wolf, Charlie Rich, Jerry Lee Lewis, Carl Perkins, Roy Orbison, some guy named Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash. These were the people that walked through those doors, and it was a small independent studio, and life-altering, culture-shattering music occurred there.
There you go. If I his side, you're gonna break another heart. You're gonna tell another lie.
It would have been, I don't remember the exact date, but it would have been a week or two after I went to work there. Because he lived in Memphis, and when he came to town, he would always drop by and hang out or record. So it would have been in the first 2 or 3 weeks that he came around, and we seemed to hit it off right from the start. And Sam was producing to start with, but then it wasn't long before he let me work with him.
Because I love you, so I take much more than I should say.
Johnny Cash always had this sort of air of mystery about him. I think it had something to do with Memphis, you know, or something like that. So he and I grew up close to each other geographically. He was over in Arkansas, but not very far in Arkansas, 40 miles or something, and I lived outside of Memphis. So we heard the same stuff on the radio is what I'm saying. Of course, we all heard the Grand Ole Opry and stuff like that, but the local stations in Memphis and Arkansas, he heard the same ones I heard. We're almost the same age. I was 10 months older than him, And I never let him forget that either. I'd say, you can have a baby in 9 months, man. Think I couldn't learn something in 10 months?
Clear blue sky and the tears that I cried for that woman. Gonna flood you, big river, and I'm gonna sit right here until I die. I met her accidentally in St. Paul, Minnesota, and it tore me up every time I heard her drawl, southern drawl.
Cash would play with this paper kind of woven through his guitar strings, and that sound would simulate a snare drum. And then there was a stand-up bass playing, and there was Luther Perkins playing some of the simplest, most wonderful electric guitar that you'd ever hear. Story goes that sometimes Sam Phillips would actually take Luther's guitar from him in between sessions so that he wouldn't practice and get better. He liked him just playing a couple strings, playing very simple stuff. And together, Cash and the Tennessee Two developed that, what we think of as that boom chicka boom sound, that signature early period Johnny Cash sound. And there was only one place to go to get it. You know, it was if Cash was in the room, he was making that sound, and if Cash wasn't in the room, then that sound wasn't being made.
I tell you what, sometimes he played the best rhythm you ever heard in your life. Sometimes the thumb would kind of get funky, but no, when he was really on it, he could play some wonderful, wonderful rhythm.
On stage, he does really well. I mean, he's not a guitar picking champion, but he played good rhythm guitar, and he certainly knew how to work with the band and be a part of the band, and was probably a better guitar player than Elvis, if that's appropriate to say.
One hallmark of Cash's music was this extreme simplicity. But it wasn't just the fact that there wasn't a lot going on, because all that did was it opened up space for this giant voice to come through.
He was just a natural communicator. Sam Phillips, like I say, he was talking about how when Johnny Cash sang, his voice would just pull people into it. It was a voice of authority or something. When he sang, people listened. It's that simple.
Cash took a singing lesson when he was a kid and was told not to come back, not to take any more singing lessons, because any kind of formal training might do something to this unforgettable voice. And the singing teacher saw early on that he did not have a voice that would blend in somebody's choir, but he did have a voice that set him apart from everyone else. He wasn't a sound-alike.
Yeah, there's something about his voice that just attracts the ear, you know. He had a great voice to record. I mean, it just really put any old microphone on it and hear it come through the speakers. Microphones and speakers loved his voice. You know, it just printed really even, and you could always understand his words, you know, and it just sounded like power. It didn't sound like no wimp. It sounded like a man singing, which is what I like.
Of course, you know, one of the things that separates good singers from great singers is the ability to not just sing the right words and sing the right notes, but the phrasing and the pauses and the dynamics, and he had tremendous control over that, and almost in a way that I don't think he thought about it very much. It was very natural.
I find it very, very easy to be true. I find myself alone when he stays through. Yes, I'll admit that I'm a fool for you, because you're mine. I walk the line. As sure as night is dark and day is light, I keep you on my mind both day and night. And happiness I've known proves that it's right, because you're mine. I walk the line.
Seems
seems to me that when I was a kid growing up in Pennsylvania, when I was about 10 years old, I started to really get into music. That would have been 1957. My dad worked part-time at a local AM radio station, and I would go in and just go through the records. I would play anything. I mean, I wanted to hear any kind of music that I could. Johnny Cash, I guess, had a hit in 1956 with I Walk the Line, but I probably didn't hear it until I started listening really heavily in 57, and I probably heard it at the radio station. But it had such a sound about it, you know, with a donk-dink, donk-dink guitar to it, you know, and his voice was just so commanding and unusual and everything, you know.
You've got a way to keep me on your side. You give me cause for love that
I Walk the Line was an explosive record for Johnny Cash, and it really launched him into the realm of artists who were sought after, who went out touring and people were wild about. There hadn't been a song like that. It started with that eerie drone that Cash got when he was in the military. He was playing back a tape in reverse accidentally and heard this noise and tried to replicate that in his song. It was a strange way to start a song. It was this impassioned love song in a way, but it was also cognizant of there's a lot of temptations out there, and he was declaring that he wouldn't fall prey to those temptations. We know that wasn't always the case, but it was an early signature record, and it stayed something throughout his entire career that people wanted to hear. I Walk the Line.
Well, it's just a great song. It's a fun song to sing. It's well written. The words are great, and the melody's great, and it's just a great song. That's always been my favorite of his songs, although he's written a lot of great songs.
Ingenious piece of music. All the modulations and stuff. It's him thinking that up is just very different.
He was he'd gone ahead and signed with Columbia before his contract was up with Sam. Sam was threatening to sue people and all this stuff, but they finally came to an agreement that if John would cut a certain number of sides before he left, he'd shut up. So it became my job to get him to do it, which wasn't much fun because his heart wasn't really into it. But, we did cut some good stuff. And finally Sam was satisfied, and they left. He should have never left in the first place. I think it was all just a misunderstanding. I think Sam got so caught up in Jerry Lee Lewis, who was the big thing at the time. I remember one day John came by and wanted Sam to go next door to have lunch. Taylor's Restaurant, right immediately next door. But Sam was all tied up calling distributors and everything with Jerry Lee Lewis. I don't know, I think that's when it happened. And then John was getting a 3% royalty. He was asking for 4, which was totally reasonable to renew. Sam, I'm sure, would have given it to him, but he wanted to kind of argue about it,
He didn't actually use drums on his recording until he left Sun and went to Columbia in Nashville. Now, his first Columbia records, before 1960, drums was on. Buddy Harmon in Nashville played on those records. But in 1960, from then on, I played on all of them.
I still think he's the best rockabilly drummer around, and nobody plays like him. All the drummers in town, even the big-time session guys talk about his train beat. They say nobody can play a train beat like him still to this day. I've never seen somebody not deteriorate the way he does with his playing. It's just bang, 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 and I guess he's in his 70s already, and he's just, he could fight a bear still today.
And when I joined him in 1960, we were all traveling in one car. See, the first tours that we made, John and Marcia and Luther and me was all in the same car. Had a 60 model Cadillac. At that time, he was just another one of us. He wasn't a big deal. He wasn't a big star, and just you know, just like you and him and me and somebody else started today, we're going to get a band together and go travel. And just, that's the way it was. Nobody thought about anybody ever being a, you know, that much of a bigger star than any other member of the group. But we got left behind.
By this time, I'm living in Beaumont, Texas. I moved there in '61, came back here in '65. Well, I'm taking a bath one night, and it's Johnny Cash on the phone, so I get out and talk to him. And he said that his wife June and Merle Kilgore had written this song called Ring of Fire, and he wanted to record it. And he'd had a dream where he heard these mariachi trumpets playing on it. So he wanted me to come to Nashville and help produce it. So I came here. I show up at the session with my guitar, and I had him change this mic on the drums, you know, a couple of things like that. I just sort of took over. That's what he wanted me to do. And he had these two horn players sitting there. They had their music stands and paper, but didn't have any charts yet. So I said, why don't you go da 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 da, and they write that down. Then I say go da 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 da. They write that down. I go over to my place there and play my guitar, and we did Ring of Fire. Two or 3 weeks later, man, I'm hearing it all over the radio. That was fun.
And it makes a fiery ring.
Ring of Fire was such an interesting song from its conception to its recording to the response to it. It was interesting as it was June Carter's sort of admission to herself that she was getting involved with this man, and that she knew this was going to be full of trouble and turmoil and heartache and every conceivable weirdness, but she was too far gone by that point. She and Merle Kilgore wrote that song together. You had a really powerful, simple piece of writing. You had this voice of the ages with Cash, and then you had this odd, can't forget it arrangement with the trumpets, and it was something that people couldn't get enough of.
I fell into a burning ring of fire, went down, 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 and the flames went higher, and it burns, 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 the ring of fire, the ring of fire, the taste.
Johnny and June had their own kind of magnetism together. They were drawn to each other, and you could see that on stage. June was never a commanding singer by any means, but she was a great comic foil for him or for anybody else that she was on stage with. She was compelling as a force of personality, and you could see that electrical charge between them when they performed together, and that would override any kind of missed notes that were going on or imperfections. They were just interesting to watch. You just couldn't keep your eyes off.
We got married in a fever, hotter than a pepper's sprout. We've been talking about Jackson ever since the fire went out. I'm going to Jackson, I'm gonna mess around. Honey, I'm going to Jackson, look out Jackson town.
Well, go on down to Jackson, go ahead and wreck your head. Go playing with hand music, talking man, make a big fool of yourself. Yeah, go to Jackson.
From girlhood, June was well aware that her sisters were better singers than she was. She was reminded sometimes by her sisters of that, and she had to develop something. Being from a showbiz family, she had to develop something that would draw people to her, and from early on that became humor. She was just funny. She had great timing. She could make funny faces. She would do great physical comedy, and she could take a really bad joke and make it something that you just absolutely wanted to hear. And she carried some of that to the Cash show when he could, on his own, sometimes appear foreboding. She brought this just, hey, we're having a good time. We're at a country show here. I'm going to tell you some jokes, and we're just going to pal around, and you're going to smile some.
I played Merle Haggard stuff and Hank Williams, Elvis, you know, but I played mainly Johnny Cash, and I had trouble finding somebody that could play like Luther did. So I got very determined about it and sat down with the records, played them over and over and over till I could sound somewhere similar to Luther Perkins.
His style is a little bit different. His sound is totally different, and he sort of brought him, you know, of course he joined the band like, what was it, 69 or 67, something like that, and he brought sort of a modern edge to it. And it's still that real hardcore simplicity, but with a little more power and a little more fist to it, you know. And he's another one. I mean, a lot of people don't realize it, but Bob played on the biggest records. He played on Boy Named Sue and the ones that were actually big monster pop hits. And so, you know, his part of the whole legacy is just as strong as Luther's was, I think.
Of course, Luther had died in August of '68, and Carl Perkins had been playing guitar for John. He and Marshall Grant were stranded in Memphis and couldn't get to Arkansas. And we got down there, and WS was on stage with John, just the two of them, and June was standing back behind the stage. And one of the people, a girl that I was with down there, saw June and went back and said, "You think John would like to have a guitar player for tonight?" And she said, "Do you know anybody that can do that?" She said, "See the guy with his chin on the front of the stage? He knows everything Johnny Cash ever did." And so June called John off stage and introduced me to him. And he told me, you know, later, he said, "I knew when I saw you and you told me," he said, "I could tell by the look in your eye you could do it."
Get a rock and roll feeling in the bones, the taps on your toes, you're gonna get rid of when you get the blues.
John was just starting to get popular with the Folsom Prison album, you know, Live from Folsom Prison. And the first tour where actually I didn't get to go on the tour, they went off on a 10-day tour, and the very first show was in Memphis at the big Coliseum. So he wanted me to sit in the audience and take notes, so that I would know what songs he did and what key, you know, and that way I could go home and practice to do the show. And so he put me out there with Marshall's wife and WS's wife and Luther's widow, and I sit with them. I wrote down the first song, and at the end of the show, that's the only thing that was written on my paper was that one song, because I got into the show so much. I loved it. And of course, like I say, Folsom was really hot, and so the place was pretty packed.
I hear the train a-coming, it's rolling around the bend, and I ain't seen the sunshine since I don't know when. I'm stuck in Folsom Prison, and time keeps dragging on.
Lots of people just assume that Cash had been to prison before, and that's an erroneous assumption. He hadn't. But when you listen to those recordings, you sense, and you can sense this both from the reaction that you hear and from the things that he says on stage, there's a real empathy there's a real mutual understanding that was there.
Obviously there was a connection there that was like a wild kind of connection that he made in that music and in those recordings. I mean, you can hear it. And maybe it's because, but for the grace of God, you know, he was not that far separated from those guys that he was singing to, you know.
When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy, don't ever play with guns. But I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die. When I hear that whistle blowing, I hang my head and cry.
On the surface, Folsom Prison Blues shouldn't have been something that seemed so original. The melody was borrowed. Even the line, you know, I shot a man in Reno just to watch him die, was awfully close to Jimmy Rogers' I shot poor Thelma just to see her jump and fall. But something about Cash's delivery, both of the melody and of that line, I mean, just to watch him die. It was just riveting.
I bet there's rich folks eating in a fancy dining car. They're probably drinking coffee and smoking big cigars. Well, I know I had it coming. I know I can't be free. But those people keep a moving, and that's what tortures me. Hey, one more time. One more time.
Really and truly for us, here again, no problems. It was just another gig, you know. I mean, there was no problems. There was no more problems. When we pulled up, we unload, and we go in to do the show just like we would have done if we'd have been playing anywhere else. And we didn't think anything about it. Of course, we had all kind of, if something had happened, we had all kind of protection, but I didn't think any more about going into to do that than I did going in to do the fair in Memphis.
Hey, look yonder coming down that railroad track. Hey, look yonder coming down that railroad track. It's that orange blossom special, bringing my baby back. Woo-hoo!
Johnny always sounded, regardless of what he was singing, like he was a man of the people. You know, even though he was a huge star, he never had that air of superiority or tone of superiority in his performances at all. And he came from a very humble background, and I think that came across in all his recorded work.
Those prisoners can sense bullshit, and had they thought that that was what Cash was trying to give them, they most certainly wouldn't have reacted in the way that they did. But man, at that San Quentin show, you know, he always said that, hey, if I just said break, you know, they'd have broken, they'd have run. You know, he would rile them up. And the photos that you see, you know, the Jim Marshall photo of him flipping the bird from prison show and things like that, it's pretty tough to look at that and go, oh, he's just kidding around. He's just playing a show. You know, this is showbiz. It didn't seem like showbiz at all. And if it had, those albums probably never would have been released. They wouldn't have worked.
So that was actually the first album that I played on that was released with San Quentin, which only sold 7 million, you know, so. Before we went there, we had gone to the Tennessee State Prison, you know, and so that was my first encounter with the prison. And it was kind of spooky, but when we went to San Quentin, because it's so massive, you know, and you walk in and you hear all these big doors clang behind you, you know, and you look around, and you have to keep your mind focused on, well, I am going to get out of here, you know. So maybe it's not so bad. By the time the day was over with, well, you know, everybody was at ease, and because the prisoners were on their best manners, you know, and enjoyed what they were doing. And John kind of enjoyed playing for people that were, you know, down on their luck and stuff.
I wish every audience could be like they were. That audience, that sound, and the reaction of that audience, I think, is one of the big things that made that record a big hit. The prisoners, I guess you could say they were so nice, and they really made the thing a big deal. I've always thought that.
Well, my daddy left home when I was 3, and he didn't leave much to Ma and me, just this old guitar and an empty bottle of booze. Now, I don't blame him because he run and hid, but the meanest thing that he ever did was before he left, he went and named me Sue.
A lot of people don't know, but Johnny only had 1 million selling single, and that was Boy Named Sue.
Yeah, he owned that song, A Boy Named Sue. It would not have been the same in anyone else's hands, and you know, perhaps the problematic relationship that he had with his own father was part of that, and another part of it was his ability to quickly convey very real anger and violence that's necessary for that song. And the third facet to it is his great humor and his comic timing, which was impeccable and which was totally necessary to deliver that song.
My name is Sue. How do you do? Now you gonna die. Yeah, that's what I told him.
The song Boy Named Sue was really not a song, it was a poem written by Shel Silverstein, who was a comic cartoonist for Playboy magazine. And of course, every time we go to a show, there would be mail in the dressing rooms for John. And this happened to be there, and he came in our dressing room, and he said, "You guys want to hear something funny?" And he read it to us, you know, we just laughed, you know, and blah, blah. Well, during the show, he kind of ran out of something to do for some reason, or something to get the crowd where he wanted them. And he said, and you can hear him saying, he said, "Bob, give me my briefcase."
But I busted a chair right across his teeth, and we crashed through the wall and into the street, kicking and gouging in the mud and the blood and the beer. I tell you, I fought tougher men, but I really can't remember when. He kicked like a mule and he bit like a crocodile.
It was just a poem. It had never been played musical. Nobody ever heard it. He got the poem out and just started reading off Boy Named Sue. Now, back then we didn't have the big monitors or anything. You couldn't actually hear what was going on. Carl Perkins was there. He was standing up close to John, and he walked up so he could tell what he was saying and just started playing a little riff thing on the guitar. Well, then when we heard that, we heard his amplifier, and we just all fell into play. And that's where it was recorded. The band didn't even know it was going to be done, but that's how it happened. No producer, no rehearsal. We didn't even know it was going to be done.
There was nothing rehearsed about it. We had heard the thing, read through one time, but I mean, they went crazy for that song. Of course, you know, I keep telling people I don't know all that much about music because I didn't think anybody would like Boy Named Sue. So I said, so what do I know? 7 million, a lot.
So I give you that name and I said goodbye. I knew you'd have to get tough or die. And it's that name that helped to make you strong. Yeah. He said, now you just fought one hell of a fight, and I know you hate me and you got the right to kill me now, and I wouldn't blame you if you do. But you ought to thank me before I die for the gravel in your guts and the spit in your eye, because I'm the son of a bitch that named you Sue. Yeah, well, what could I do? What could I do? I got all choked up and I threw down my gun, called him my pa and he called me a son, and I come away with a different point of view. And I think about him now and then, every time I try and every time I win. And if I ever have a son, I think I'm gonna name him Bill or George, any damn thing but Sue. I still ain't been there.
Cash was always very generous on stage, and he liked to bring the spotlight to other people. I think he was just a guy who had a really amazing generosity of spirit. Also, you can just say, well, maybe he would prefer performing for 45 minutes of the time instead of an hour and a half. I don't know that was it at all. I know it cost a lot of money to bring all those people out on the road, and if somebody was kind of doing something for selfish reasons, then they would just go ahead and dig in and do the hour and a half and leave all those other folks at home and not have to pick up those hotel bills and per diems and meal charges. He believed in a variety kind of show, and he knew that what he did was very singular and very focused, and maybe didn't always want to take an audience there, or didn't think the audience wanted to be there for a full hour and a half.
It is an honor to have been in a group that traveled around when the Johnny Cash show had Carl Perkins, the Statler brothers, and the Carter family, and Johnny Cash. When somebody come to our concert, if they didn't like something they saw or heard, they just was in the wrong place, because, we did it all.
Children, go where I send thee, Lewis. How shall I send thee? I'm gonna send thee 7 to 7. 7 by 7, that went on the head. 6 by 6, they couldn't get me. Couldn't make yeah, 3 by the Hebrew children, and 2 by Paul and the Silas, and 1 by the little bitty baby who was born in Bethlehem. Children, go where I send thee, children. How shall I send thee? I'm gonna send thee.
Well, one reason John had the Carter family was because of June. They had all gone into retirement. Mother Maybelle was what they call a candy striper at a hospital, where she, made beds and helped the patients get dressed. And Helen Carter would go around to colleges and talk about the Carter family music, and show them how to play the old Carter family scratch on the guitar and the auto harp. And of course, June was still in the music business, and then her younger sister Anita didn't have to do anything. She was laying up on the beach in Alabama. But June talked John into hiring them.
The Statler brothers were a backing vocal group for Cash, and he also would have them do their songs as they became an established recording act, and that really helped to launch their career. They had a song about that, actually. They wrote a hit song that was about when we got paid by Cash. It was about their early days in the business with him. So joining Johnny Cash's band, or being in the Johnny Cash Roadshow, was a real good thing.
Now flowers on the wall, that don't bother me at all. Playing solitaire till dawn with the deck of 51. Smoking cigarettes and watching Captain Kangaroo. Now don't tell me I've nothing to do.
The whole bunch was like my family. I mean, I had 3 brothers and 2 sisters, and I saw them maybe once or twice a year. I saw John and the bunch, 170 times a year, So it makes you real close.
One more time, children, go where I send these Stattlers. How shall I send thee? I'm gonna send thee 12 by 12. 12 by 12, it couldn't get help. 11 by 11, that couldn't get help. 10 by 10, it couldn't get help.
9 by 9, the dress so fine. 8 by 8, that's to that again.
7 by 7, that went on the head. It couldn't get sick. It couldn't get by.
Oh, that's all that's to that again.
3 by the Hebrew children, and 2 by Paul and Silas, and 1 by the little bitty baby who was born.
I think it was huge. You know, we're talking about an era when most people in the United States could only watch maybe 3 or 4 television stations, unless you lived in a really big city. And so that the choices on any given evening, you know, after you got done with your dinner and you wanted to watch a little television, were very limited. And Johnny's show had real live musical performances, and it put his face and his music in the front of people who perhaps never even thought they liked country music.
If you're traveling in the North Country Fair, where the winds hit heavy on the borderline, remember me to the one who lives there, for she once was a true love of mine.
The show that Johnny Cash had on ABC was important for a number of reasons, and not always important to his own career. It wasn't. He was on top as he was taking that show, and it took a lot of his creative energies and a lot of his time to do the show. I think probably took away from some of his songwriting efforts, but he used that show both as a place to provide entertaining music, and it's a little bit of a bully pulpit to bring Bob Dylan into Nashville and have Bob Dylan there on the stage at the Ryman Auditorium singing with Johnny Cash. That was a real statement. It was a coming together of what were supposedly competing cultures, although Johnny Cash had never seen it that way, and Bob Dylan had attended a Cash show as a kid and really idolized Cash.
He had all kinds of people on there. You know, that gives you an idea about the scope of kind of stuff he liked. Like I say, he appreciated being entertained.
Pretty woman, walking down the street, pretty woman, the kind I like to be, pretty woman. I don't believe you're not the truth. No one could look as good as you. Mercy, that's my line.
Back in those days, I watched, I probably watched TV every night. I was married for the first time, and so yeah, we watched that every week because it was a good musical show. In the same way that we watched the Smothers Brothers and Glenn Campbell, Good Time Hour, and stuff like that. Johnny Cash's show was a good show, and you just, I mean, to see him come on and go, "Hi, I'm Johnny Cash." I mean, it was great. You just had to watch it, even just for that, and find out who he's got on.
Then you're as lovely as can be. Are you lonely just like me? Pretty woman, stop a while. Pretty woman, talk a while. Pretty woman, give your smile to me.
Oh yeah, it was #1 show for 2 or 3 seasons there, and John got tired of the I guess it was, you say, the schedule, because it got to where we were doing 2 TV shows a week. You'd go in on Monday and have a read-through, rehearsal Tuesday, and you're rehearsing 2 shows and reading through 2 shows, and then on Wednesday, and you run through them, and then on Thursday you'd film 2 shows. Friday you'd get up and get on a plane and go out and work Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Come back in Monday, do 2, start on 2 more shows again, and the schedule was just more than he could handle, So, I mean, it would have been nice to keep going. It's what I call that mailbox money. You don't have to leave home and money still comes in. I like that.
An old cowboy went riding out one dark and windy day. Up on a ridge he rested as he went along his way. When all at once a mighty herd of red-eyed cows he saw plowing through the ragged sky.
The Highwaymen were really, really interesting and really good. Cash, even in that crowd, was able to just stand out and be this magnetic force. Christofferson was somebody who didn't have the vocal pipes of any of those other guys, but the words he had written and the way that he presented himself, man, there was no way to ignore his part in that. They also had, you know, Willie as the sort of pot-smoking, peace-loving, long-haired guy, and Waylon as the guy that just looked like he might shake your hand or he might just stomp you with his boot.
Yippee-yi-yo, yippee-yi-yo, those riders in the sky.
All of the Highwaymen that was another great experience, and of course, as far as anybody coming to see them, I mean, imagine why anybody wouldn't want to see, you know, those four guys on the stage performing together. And I was fortunate enough to be the one to go with John on all of, because the whole band didn't go on that show. It was too much problem for four bands to have to change between every act because they were all four on the stage at the same time. One would do a song and another would do a song. And so they decided to get one band to back them all up. But I was fortunate enough to go with John on all of them and had a great time. It was quite a time period that I really enjoyed.
I was born one morning, it was drizzling rain. Fighting and trouble are my middle name. Raised in the canebrake by an old mama line. Ain't no hat-on woman make me walk the line. Those 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store.
We had started Johnny Cash's Coming to Town before he was even signed with Mercury, and we'd already spent a lot of money before the contract was signed, and people were waiting on contracts and stuff, but that was the first of the Mercury series.
I met Johnny Cash the first day of the session for the album that we did, Johnny Cash is Coming to Town. Now, I had been to some industry functions, you know, shake his hand, but to actually, you know, talk with him and have an interchange with him, that was the first time. It was the day of the first session.
16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. I owe my soul to the company store.
He knew he was going to sign with Mercury. He knew he was going to sign with Mercury. And Steve Popovich had come back to town, and he was signing some of the artists that had been left in the wake of some of the young cowboy hat acts, you know, and he was signing those acts. He signed like Donna Fargo and two or three others, David Allan Coe maybe, and Johnny, and but he knew that he was going to sign. That's why we went ahead and started the record, and but it was we were working on recording or building up to what was going to be on the record during that year period.
There is sometimes the notion that, oh well, fashion went a different way, and then Cash comes back, and all of a sudden it's cool to like Johnny Cash again or something. Maybe there's a bit to that, but I think that he well admitted that he spent a lot of years just not in a really good creative place and not making music, certainly not making original music in the way that he had in the 50s and in the 60s.
The public tends to like what they're given, you know, and the gods either make you or break you, you know? I mean, you can have the greatest record in the world, but if nobody hears it, then you got nothing.
The cost of promoting country music is outrageously expensive, and it has been for decades. And Johnny was, of course, very popular through the 60s and early 70s, and then to the average public sort of disappeared.
There was maybe a misunderstanding between Johnny and the music business. Johnny wanted to be Johnny, and the music business wants to be commercial and marketable. Johnny Cash mattered to his fans, and he mattered to people who appreciate the art of making music and the art of saying what it is that you want to say. He mattered to all those people. It doesn't matter what he mattered to the business.
Bad luck wind been blowing at my back. I was born to bring trouble to wherever I'm at.
The Beast. He was there when I was born, I think. I think I met him when I was a little boy. When I killed my first snake. Probably. I enjoyed it. I don't know. I guess I kind of liked that Beast. I liked him. I thought I liked him. He made me believe I loved him. So I played with him. I let him out and ran and played with him. We ran down the streets together. We went into hotel rooms together. We went to bars together. We hung out with the drug crowd together, the Beast and I. And he was beautiful at the time. He's really a good-looking beast. But he was a demon called deception.
The beast in me is caged by frail and fragile bars, restless by day and by night, rants and rages at the stars. God help the beast in me.
The reason why that was listened to and critically acclaimed is because Rick Rubin said it was good. That was enough. That he carries a lot of weight, you know, and young people listen to him. He single-handedly turned Johnny's career around.
And in the twinkling of an eye, might have to be restrained. God help the beast in me.
Well, I mean, his introspection is wonderful. As an artist, you know, he's an old guy doing songs. That being said, that doesn't mean negative, but what it means is that he's not the same Johnny Cash who blazed trails. Now he's like putting a punctuation mark on his career, a really fine punctuation mark on his career, by doing something that is that reveals something about the man, reveals a lot about the man.
I got a letter from my Uncle Bud, and I rode away on the Tennessee Stud. The Tennessee Stud was long and lean, the color of the sun, and his eyes were green. He had the nerve and he had the blood. There never was a horse like the Tennessee Stud.
We did a tour in '96 that was just the small band, just the Tennessee Three and him, and the Carter family wasn't on it. It was just really small. I could already see the younger kids becoming aware of him, you know. And we started playing punk rock clubs and things like that, just because it was Rick's vision to cultivate that crowd. And those kids were just voracious about it, and it just started building and building and building, and ironically it snowballed after he died. But it was already something that was happening, and we could see it happening. And the older guys in the band, it took them a while to get it, because he had pulled us away from Johnny's core audience, which at that time were probably people in their 50s and 60s, and it really just split and went down the middle. And one night we'd be playing at a performing arts center with people in suits and coats and ties, and the next night we'd be playing in front of goths and punk rockers, and it was a very, very unusual thing to see.
Rode right back across Arkansas. I whipped her brother and I whipped her pa. I found that girl with the golden hair, and she was riding on a Tennessee mare. Pretty little baby on the cabin floor, little horse colt playing round the door.
We had no idea of Quentin when we did. In '97, when we did the last show at a place right out of Detroit, Michigan. And it's so weird what happened, and I think if this hadn't happened, he'd have went on a long time after that. There was nothing wrong. He was doing fine. He dropped his guitar pick,
which I've seen him do 100 times, or more, and he just reached back behind. I'd hand him another guitar pick. Well, this night he reached down to pick it up, and when he did, he almost fell off the stage. I reached and grabbed him by the coat.
John had so much respect from the audience that nobody ever heckled him or ever said anything. But somebody in the audience hollered, "Well, you're too drunk to perform, John," And that had never happened to him before. And he couldn't handle that. And if that person hadn't hollered, or if he hadn't dropped his pick, that would not have been our last show.
It started getting hard for him around the middle of that third record. He was getting weaker by the beginning of it, really, and he'd get up the energy. What excited him, what he wanted to do was sing and record, and that made him feel better. I would talk to him on the phone. He'd sound all blue, and then he'd say, "But we're recording tomorrow." And I said, "Yep, great, let's do it." And that would bring the strength out in his voice, just being able to do it, to do his craft. That's what he did.
Delia, oh Delia, Delia all my life. If I hadn't a shot poor Delia, I'd have had her for my wife. Delia's gone, one more round, Delia's gone.
All that was done at his cabin studio or in his house out there. And, just a very minimal amount of equipment, because they just wanted 2 or 3 tracks to go with. And then Ferg, the engineer, would get with Rick Rubin, and they'd go out to California and add stuff and take stuff away and all that. But John always liked my guitar playing, and he just liked to have me around when he was recording. So for the last 5 or 6 years of his life, I was out there a lot. Especially after June died. Now, when she was in a hospital and she was in a coma, everybody knew she wasn't coming back. And he's got a little room off away from there, a little suite. And we're talking, and he's saying that, when June passes away, he's going to dive into singing a lot.
After June died, it was really a bummer for him. That was really a bummer for him. He hated, he just, he was just sad. He was just sad. It just knocked the wind right out of his sails for a while, And he really missed her bad. It was terrible, really sad.
Johnny was just the hardest working guy I've ever seen in the studio. I've made a lot of records with people, and for every record, he cut 80 songs, easily. And then maybe 10 made the record, So he was recording up until a week before he died, from what I understand.
American 4, no, I didn't think it was going to be his last record, because we were still recording. He was looking forward to getting that one behind him and getting on with the next one because he wasn't touring anymore. Johnny would just record whenever he wanted to and record a lot of stuff. And I never looked at any of them like the last.
First time I shot her in the side. Hard to watch her suffer, but with the second shot she died. Delia's gone, one more round, Delia's gone. But jailer, oh jailer, jailer, I can't sleep, 'cause all around my bedside I hear the patter of Delia's feet.
There are still Rick Rubin produced American recordings that we haven't heard, and I suspect they'll be coming out for a while. And I also suspect that it won't feel like scraping the bottom of the barrel. In 2006, there was a new album released, and it's really, really good.
He got a lot of good words on paper, left a lot of good songs, and a whole lot of records. A whole lot of good records.
His life was a roller coaster. It was a roller coaster. And how somebody can stay on for that ride, and last as long as he did. I mean, it's a tremendous weight on your shoulders being somebody like him. And I think he'll be remembered for being a really, really strong person and a man that was a giver that left us a lot of great music to listen to.
On a Monday, I was arrested. On a Tuesday, they locked me in the jail. Oh boy.
I can still do anything as good as I ever could. And the reason is because I never could do anything very good.
I know a dark, secluded place, a place where no one knows your face, a glass of wine, a fast embrace, you're in Hernando's hideaway, ole.
Cowboy has a videotape of the day that Johnny arrived at the studio in his new Ferrari. And of course it's a spectacular automobile, bright red. The car was so low to the ground and Johnny was such a large man, he literally could not get in and out of it without crawling in and out in the most ungraceful fashion that you could imagine. Once he was in the car, it was fine, but getting in and getting out, it was just unbelievable.
Where did I get the nickname Fluke? Oh, me. Okay. It's on some of the websites that the reason I got the name is because what a fluke deal it was the way I got into business. Actually, what happened, when I was a little kid, we lived next door to a service station, and I'd hang around that service station a lot. And so it kind of seemed like a smart aleck thing to say. You know how somebody will say, well, what is that doing? Or what is that thing? Or let me see that. I thought it sounded kind of like a little smart aleck kid to say, what is that flukus? Let me see that flukus. So it got so when they see me coming in, they say, well, here comes Fluke.
Pop it to me, baby.
I keep the ends out for the tide to find.